Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Thanatos. Thanatos is an assassin with crazy high burst and hypercarry potential, stomping both arena and conquest games alike since his release. Build-wise, Thanatos has a lot of flexibility thanks to his aggression, and ability to work with a basic attack-based build or an ability-based one, although the latter of the two is always considered the more competitive. A bit of defense on him is totally fine, if not needed in some situations, and there are occasionally some builds on him that are focused around tankier items, just not right now. Relics wise, he's definitely a jungler who can go beads and Aegis, but going Blink first and then into beads at level 12 works just fine too, and again is usually considered the more competitive of the two routes. While I've spoken quite a bit about Thanatos' carry potential, his notoriety mostly comes from his impact in the early game, largely due to his first ability. Thanatos throws his scythe in a pretty narrow medium speed projectile, stopping on the first enemy hit and is unable to pass through walls. This ability having a low mana cost but costing 5% of your current health to use. Once the scythe connects however, it slows and deals massive damage, as well as bonus damage based on 10% of the target's max health. Thanatos then heals for 75% of the total damage dealt. If you couldn't tell already, this is Thanatos' make or break ability. While the rest of his damage is okay, this is where Thanatos' real damage comes from, with of course the heal giving him a massive advantage in any extended trade. This ability is also absurd poke when grabbing farm in the mid lane and the early game, that is if you're able to hit it. If you look up the word infamous in a dictionary, there'll be a picture of Death Scythe in there. That'll probably throw most readers for a loop, but it's an accurate definition. Thanatos absolutely lives and dies by this ability connecting, as it's his only movement inhibiting CC as well as a majority of his damage in his core kit, and just about every Smite player is going to know this. So you will absolutely see just about any god in the game keep their distance from you while slipping on their juke shoes, as well as stand behind their minions so you can't connect the scythe on them. It can be pretty tricky, which is why you typically see Thana players blinking in to make sure the ability hits so they can begin rushing you down, as again, the slow is the only movement inhibiting crowd control in his core kit. That said, leading shots or predicting jukes on longer ranges is what sets an average and a good Thanatos apart. And you should really look to check out your scythe whenever you can. I mean, there's a reason everyone on the enemy team is trying to stay out of its range. The same goes for when someone tries to dive or chase you. Anyone who aggresses on you should be getting a swift death scythe to the face. And honestly, as a Thana in Conquest in the early and mid game, you'll notice people, even those who are in a good winning matchup, avoid you at all costs to avoid getting a good quarter of their life bar removed by this ability. Of course, missing it is pretty detrimental, so if you miss Death Scythe, just turn and walk away in shame until it's back up. But what do you do once this ability has connected? This is where Thana's second ability comes in. Thanatos gains move speed as well as flat penetration, and becomes completely immune to slows for 6 seconds. This ability again costing 5% of your current health in addition to mana. So not only does this give you a great little basic attack cancel to combo with your first ability, but it's also the perfect match for the immense slow on your scythe, as well as boosting his already insane damage with the extra flat penetration. And with the scythe's damaging slow and the move speed from this ability on top, that gives you the perfect opportunity to start shredding through your targets with basic attacks. Naturally, the most damaging solution is to pop your 2, hit the scythe, and then chase from there. But of course, who's going to see a Thanatos pop his 2 and not run away from him? So typically, you'll find that confirming the hit on the scythe and then moving in with your 2 is the best solution. Still though, you're not fighting gods 100% of the time, so you can actually use this to accelerate your farm in the jungle. You want to do this sparingly, but for me after my first back, I pop my 2 after dropping speed, go to the large harpy camp and then the smalls, while the red side of the jungle doesn't really have a good path for this, but going from green to red with your 2 isn't a bad idea. Also while swapping sides of the jungle, this is important too. Just remember to give yourself enough leeway to always have this ability up when it comes for gank time. Remember, it goes on cooldown right after you pop it, so in this case, popping it just as you're about to traverse a decent section of jungle is optimal. Speaking of optimal jungle clear, this does give me a chance to mention Thana's hit chain, definitely one of the better in the assassin category. Thana hits once normally, then quickly with a lower damage swing, then winds up for a high damaging cone. This hit chain is absolutely stellar for clearing camps, and you usually only need to use one ability on a camp and then fall back on this hit chain for clearing camps. When hitting gods though, that weak second hit and the delay on the third and final hit is part of why basic attack cancelling is so important. But also when teamed with your second ability, you can easily pace yourself with this basic attack chain to hit your entire chain while simply chasing. To do this, simply let off the basic attack button once the basic attack connects, then let your character catch back up to your intended target, and repeat. This of course works on any god in the game as long as you have more move speed than whoever you're chasing. But it's very important to know, since if you're playing Thana correctly, you'll always have your second ability active when chasing for a kill. That's not all for Thanatos' second ability though, it also works great with his third ability. Thanatos winds up and swings his scythe in a huge cone AoE in front of him, his movement speed being reduced while this ability is cast. This ability damages and silences any enemies hit by it, and again costs 5% of his current health to cast. So first things first, the movement speed reduction on this can be pretty nasty, but if you have your second ability active at any rank, you will still have a net gain in movement speed while casting this ability. So if you haven't gotten the memo by now, never fight without your 2 active. The hitbox properties are interesting too, and since the windup is so long, you can flick this ability pretty hard. But what do you use this ability for? Damaging and silencing enemies. Yeah, there's really not much to this ability. You typically use it as you're running at a target so they either can't dash or leap away from you, or have effective means to fight back by stripping away their abilities. But naturally, if you're laning against someone who needs to channel an ability to clear, you want to save this ability to swipe it away from them. Interruptions during the cast time of an ability with this ability do work too, of course, but it's not like the knock sounds or Ganesh sounds, which are instant, so interrupting the casting of abilities is a lot more difficult, and it's something you'll need to learn on a case-by-case basis as you play Thanatos. While it's best to do this ability as early as possible, if you're already on top of someone, it's usually best to use this after the second hit of your basic attack chain. It does more damage than the third hit of your chain for most of the game, and of course resets your basic attack chain for better chase potential. But when it comes to chase potential, there's nothing quite like Thanatos' ultimate. Thanatos becomes CC immune and flies into the sky for 5 seconds. He gains heavy move speed and is able to move freely. After 5 seconds, or if Thana reactivates this ability, Thanatos will be thrust down onto a medium-sized AoE on the ground. Here's the kicker though, any enemies who are below 24% HP are executed instead, this threshold increasing up to 40% with levels. So here's Thana's escape, chase down, and initiator all in one. Let's start simple with it being an escape. If you feel like you're in big trouble with no way out, you use the ultimate and escape. That said though, if you initiate on a team and do a bunch of damage, you can actually ult immediately after doing this. Then escape if the combo landed, or take to the skies and watch the fight unfold from above, giving you the option to escape if your team starts losing, or re-engage if your team is winning the fight. Simple enough, just like using this ability as chase down. The optimal scenario is of course performing a regular gank that gets your target in execute range, going into the ult, and executing. But even if your target isn't in execute range, it's never a bad idea to chase with this ultimate, since its speed and range gives you so many options to either dive heavily, particularly if you have your first ability up, or beat a hasty retreat. Finally, let's talk about using this ability as an initiation. Your natural inclination might be to basic attack then use your first ability, but this isn't always the best option. If your target has any level of DR on them, and they have quick fingers, they'll be able to avoid your follow-up Death Scythe easily. DR, if you don't know, is a mechanic which lessens the effect of hard crowd control if a target is hit with too many successive instances of it. So if a target has a stack of DR on them, that sweet 1 second stun is turning into a half second stun real quick. When you first start, I'd recommend just going for the scythe right away upon connecting the ultimate. At this point, after playing Thana for almost 6 years now, Jesus fucking Christ, my brain knows when I have enough time to get the optimal basic attack into scythe, but when you're first starting, it's best to play it safe. Of course though, your execute is often key to effectiveness in a match, and there are a few things your opponent's going to do to try and avoid this. For one, of course, Aegis is just going to immune it, and then any burst heals from a healer, or even using the relic meditation can tip them back over. From there, they might just immediately follow up with beads as well, and then follow up with their own hard CC and turn back on you. So when going for initiations or execute, you really have to keep a keen eye on things like Aegis, meditation, or any burst heals. Or hey, even dashes. A well-timed dash or leap can easily avoid Thana's ultimate if timed well. Try and make a checklist in your head of these things before diving in. That's not it for your executes though, as any enemies who are within your current execute range will be revealed to you, accompanied by a heartbeat sound effect. Additionally, if Thanatos has his 2 active, he gains double the additional move speed when moving toward the targets under the execute threshold, including during his ultimate, and this leads us neatly into his passive. Upon hitting the killing blow of any enemy, Thanatos restores 10% of the target's max HP to himself, with this being increased to 20% of the target's max HP to himself. So this not only makes his jungling and laning sustain excellent, but it also means that every kill, and importantly every execute he performs, gives him a health boost to move on to the next target. That's not all though. When getting the killing blow on any enemy god, he has all of his current cooldowns reduced by a flat 5 seconds, giving him insane pop-off potential upon collecting his first kill in a fight. I've been peppering them throughout this video, but here's a few combos with Thana. For leveling, you want your 1 at level 1, your 3 at level 2, and your 2 at level 3. From there you want to level your 1, your 2, then your 3. Leveling the ult whenever you can, mostly for the boost to execute range. Leveling your 3 over your 2 for more burst is understandable, but your damage overall as well as your chase potential is much higher when you max your second ability. Thanatos is a funny case, because nobody can really seem to get a consensus on the guy. He's only good in the early game. No, he's only good in the late game. He's just a pump stomp god. No, he's competitively viable. But the truth of the matter is, there are so many opinions about Thanatos because he's just a well-rounded character. He's great in the early and mid game, and while he does fall off a bit late game, it's no more than any other ability-based assassins, and the execute just makes his late game that much better. Of course, he's pretty trash into triple tanks, but if your team can pick up the slack, he's got the execute over their heads that most tanks have no way of avoiding. Thanatos is a character that thrives off player confidence. You really have to get in people's faces, dive a tower every now and again, really apply that pressure and keep it rolling till the game's over. And please practice hitting your scythes. A Thana who can hit every scythe is a Thana who can't lose. Unless your team throws. That's all I have on Thanatos for now though. Thanks for watching.